1 year ago, as of this week, I started working on a project that would turn out to be the most rewarding, educational, direction-altering project that I've ever worked on, and easily my single favorite thing that I've ever been paid to do. At the time, I had just finished the first year of a 2-year graduate program at the University of Oregon for multimedia journalism. And while I was learning a lot in that program, my mind was always drifting off into things like, what do I want to work on? What do I want to do? I knew that film was it, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be documentary style film or narrative style film. And this wasn't film school, this was journalism school. But we were learning a lot about filmmaking, but more focused on the documentary aspect of it. So I was on summer break and I got a call from my friend Steven, who works at a talent agency. And he said that there's this director from Montreal who's looking for a production assistant. And I really didn't know what that was at the time. He told me that it didn't pay a lot, but he did say that it was going to be a huge learning experience for me to work on an independent feature film over the course of about 20 days. And he was right, but I don't think he quite understood how much of a learning experience this was going to be. But I trusted his instincts and the fact that he's proven time and time again to have my best interest in mind when it comes to my career and learning how to be a better filmmaker. So I connected with Pascal Payan, the director, and it turns out that he would also be the producer, the writer, the cinematographer, and the editor. So this was a very small crew, but again, I didn't know any better, so we spoke on the phone for about an hour and I was on board. Now I'm going to make another episode that's focused entirely around the process of making that film and a lot of things that I learned along the way. But in this episode, I'm going to focus on one of my secondary roles on that film, which was to shoot the behind the scenes stuff. Now this was something that I offered to do because I wanted to get some experience doing it, and I heard that he wanted to have this done anyway. So I grabbed a camera and I just followed the crew around. When we weren't doing other things, I was just shooting. And since the film is just being finished and about ready for release, I'm in the middle of editing the behind the scenes video. And one of the things that I'm being reminded of is the fact that shooting too much or shooting more is far better than shooting not enough. And this is one of the key differences I've noticed about working with true professionals, is that they shoot more than they think that they'll need. They'll shoot a few more takes, because when you get back to the editing bay and you realize that you don't have enough good footage to put together a visual story, it's a really frustrating thing, because oftentimes, like in the case of making this film, you only get one shot. People live all over the country and in Canada and all these different places, so I can't reproduce this footage. I can't reproduce these experiences. And on some of the first videos I made, I would go out and I would shoot enough B-roll that I thought that I would need in order to make a 3 to 5 minute video, to tell a 3 to 5 minute story. But oftentimes, especially with those first videos, you come back and you realize the footage is a little shakier than you thought, or maybe it wasn't as in focus as you were hoping, or maybe some of the shots don't transition well, or maybe partway through the edit you decided to change the story a bit and now you don't have enough footage to tell the story visually on top of whatever interviews or scripted audio that you have. So I learned pretty early on that shooting too much is a good problem to have, as long as you have the hard drive space to support it. And here's a few reasons that I believe, based on my own personal experiences, that shooting more is better. The first I already mentioned, which is that you want to be able to tell the story that you want to be able to tell, not the story that you're limited to telling because of the fact that you didn't capture enough footage. The second is that it improves your skills. The more you shoot, the better you'll get. As long as you're willing to take criticism from peers or an audience and apply those criticisms to future projects, then you can't help but really improve. The third reason is that it inspires. Every time I go out and shoot, I learn something new. Whether it's an angle, lighting, color, framing, ways to move the camera, when to not move the camera, whether to chase action or whether to let the action play out in the frame. These can all set moods and tones, and learning those and taking that footage back to editing and looking at something and realizing, okay, this sets a tone or a mood that maybe you hadn't considered before. And the fourth reason is that you could be gathering footage for future projects that you didn't even know that you were going to need. For example, if you're out in the city or you're out in the mountains and you're shooting B-roll for one project and you shoot way more than you think you need, later down the road, you're working on a project and you find that you could use a clip to transition or to help strengthen the story or the imagery, and you just happen to have that footage sitting on your hard drive. And so as I'm editing this behind the scenes video, 1 year after shooting it, I shot a lot, and I have a lot of options to choose from. So when I'm laying out this video and I'm deciding the visual representation that I want to use to best communicate visually what it is that the subjects are saying verbally, I just have a lot more to choose from. Now, as I've done in past episodes, I'm going to show you a video that I produced. It's a 5-minute long piece. It was a student assignment. If I remember correctly, the video was to promote oneself. It was a video production business class. And one of the key elements of this class was to be vulnerable. And for me, being vulnerable is telling stories about myself, being personal, which is ironic because I'm doing a vlog. And trust me, this is difficult. Sitting down in front of a camera and recording myself and talking about myself, this is difficult for me. This is one of the challenges of doing this vlog. One of the things I'm trying to become better at and trying to overcome. Now, how this assignment fits in this video is that after weeks of trying to come up with some amazing idea and just being crippled by analysis paralysis, starting something and then scrapping it and then starting something else and then scrapping it as well, I was down to the wire. I had 24 hours to turn this assignment in. And then with that sense of panic and pressure that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, and it certainly happened to me a lot over the years, it just came to me. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, so I rushed to write it down, record it, and then I was like, shit, I don't have any way to show this visually. So do I turn it in as a podcast? I didn't really think it would work well as a podcast. I think this needed to be a video. So I just went through my hard drive and I started mining. And I found everything I needed to put this video together. It's not all perfect, but not a single frame of this video was shot for this video. It was all shot for past projects or stuff that I was just shooting while running around town, with the exception of a few movie clips, which will be clear when you see it.
The institutions that govern our world, the ideologies that establish those institutions, the people who formed and promote those ideologies, do not and should not have to be taken at face value. Growing up in a rural Oregon town, I saw the world through what I felt like was a very narrow lens. The people around me were, for the most part, very similar. Most had the same color skin, the same general beliefs about things like religion and culture. Diversity wasn't something that was being celebrated. It felt more like people all participating in the same cultural experience, but participating in that experience in different ways and with different roles. I began to feel restless, uneasy, and curious. I began to see patterns that made me question everything. My trust in the voices around me that controlled the messages on issues like divinity, science, race, sexuality, punishment, and vulnerable populations was diminishing. Cynicism began to fog my narrow lens. But this is where life started getting really interesting, because though my cynicism was becoming a part of my identity, other things were stronger and a part of my core. An optimism about the world, compassion for people and nature, a drive to explore and experiment, a curiosity to know just how much I didn't know, a genuine interest in people's uniquenesses, and a desire to do something great in life. So all of this, even with my criticism and cynicism for the norms that made up the world around me, helped form in me a rebellious motivation to get after it, to embrace what the world has to offer, and to use this experience called life to make positive change wherever possible. So what do? I like talking to people. I have some education and experience in politics, media, business, and even culinary arts. So what do? I remember one night when I was 13 years old, I was up late watching Showtime at like 2 a.m, and a movie was coming on that seemed interesting, but also maybe something that my parents wouldn't necessarily approve of. And no, it wasn't one of those kinds of movies. The movie was A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. My life was changed forever. The way in which I understood how stories could be told had been altered, and I was hooked. I found every opportunity that I could to watch all of Kubrick's movies. 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining, Doctor Strangelove, Full Metal Jacket. I couldn't get enough, and I sought out more movies that made me feel the way that his movies made me feel. And then Pulp Fiction came out, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of movies somehow, someday. And then I wasn't. Life happened. and it passed me by. And it's been wonderful and difficult. It's been full of adventure as well as moments of wondering if I should be spending my time doing something different. So at the age of 36, 22 years after Pulp Fiction came out, I'd lived a life of hard times and great times and having children, getting married, buying real estate, changed careers a few times, traveled the world, and I made some money along the way. But I decided to go back to school to be what I wanted to be when I grow up. To develop my skills and voice for telling the stories that I want to tell, and one day run a media company. And this is one of the best decisions I ever made. I've had the opportunity to tell stories about a massive fire in Oregon along the Columbia River Gorge, a business owner who was impacted by that fire, other business owners who helped elevate an emerging market, an inventor of emerging technologies that can make a difference in people's lives, a kid who could use that technology, but who will be smiling with or without it, a girl who decided to start making others smile with her new aspirations in stand-up comedy, and another girl who had decided to start modeling nude for reasons of empowerment, a professional athlete whose name was being smothered by larger, more mainstream outlets. And I got to work on a feature film, which was the single greatest experience that I've ever been paid for. The institutions that govern our world, the ideologies that establish those institutions, the people who formed and promote those ideologies do not and should not have to be taken at face value. I believe this to be true, but I don't necessarily believe that it ends there. Not everyone is an expert or experienced or capable. Not every ideology is good for humanity or for the earth. Not every institution should stay in existence simply because they have the power to or because they're old. Not everyone's opinions or ideas carry a great deal of value, but there is something that almost every person has to offer that is of value and can make an impact on others in some profound ways. Everyone has a story, and I believe that we can get to a place as a melting pot of cultures and diverse experiences where we can share more of our stories and less of our opinions and critiques and talking points. And then we listen to the stories of others without judgment or walls or defenses. I honestly believe that great things can happen from this. I believe this because I believe that more than stats and arguments and ideological divisions, stories are what leave a lasting imprint on people the most. And I believe that stories have the power to widen our lenses, even if just a little. That is my why.
And so there you have it. Was it the best video ever? No. But it did the job. It told the story. And stylistically, I think using footage from all these different cameras actually worked for this particular video. As one film producer told me while I was working with them, and this guy was good, if your legs don't hurt by the end of a shoot day, then you're probably not working hard enough. And I try to take that with me every time I'm going to shoot for something. Is just to shoot as much as possible, shoot at every angle I can, and just use all those opportunities, all those minutes that you have, because sometimes you don't have a lot of them, but to use that time to just keep shooting and keep shooting. And it seems that only good can come from that, so long as you have the hard drive space to support it. And as Pascal, the filmmaker I discussed earlier, has told me on multiple occasions, since we shot that film together, we still stay in touch. Get off your ass and go make some shit.